Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Katie. I'm from Madison Street Books. I am so happy to be joined by author June Gervais today and our conversation partner, Margarita Montimore, to discuss June's new book, Jobs for Girls with Artistic Flair. Thanks so much for coming, y'all. I will turn it over to you. I'm very excited to hear what you guys have to say, so thank you.
All right. So shall I do Margarita, thank you so much for being here. I was already saying this to you in the green room, but I loved Una Out of Order. It was so imaginative and fun. And it's just really an honor to be doing this with you.
Thank you. Well, we're in a mutual admiration society here because I love your beautiful book. And so I don't know if you wanted to do a quick reading before we dive into, or maybe like a quick and dirty summary for those tuning in and who may not, have a sense of what the book's about, and then give them a little taste and get them hooked. And then we'll chat. We'll talk, as they say in Long Island. I'm from Brooklyn, so I used to talk like this all the time anyway, when I was a kid.
So I also have a copy. So this is Jobs for Girls with Artistic Flair. This is my debut novel, and it's the coming-of-age story of a young woman named Gina Mully, who wants to become a tattoo artist in the mid-'80s. In the 80s, tattoo culture was very different than it is now. It had not entered the mainstream. There were not, reality shows and celebrity Instagram tattooers. It was a gritty subculture, and women were very rare in the industry. So this young woman is trying to make her way, really an uphill climb for something that she fiercely wants to do. And as she goes onwards, she falls in love with another young woman and has adventures and makes mistakes like people should in novels, I hope. So that's probably all you need to know to get started. And yeah, so I'll read it for like 5 minutes or so, and then we'll chit-chat. All right. This takes place in a fictional Long Island town called Blue Claw. July 1st, 1985, Blue Claw, Long Island, New York. How freeing it would be, how useful, how illuminating if a fortune teller should walk through the door of Mully's tattoo. Who else could Gina consult? For 3 days, she'd been pacing the docks behind the shop as if she'd catch some brilliant idea swimming in the river, just fish it out of those rainbow wriggles of oil slick. An hour ago, Dominic had said, enough, and he was the authority, the shop owner, the 10 years older brother. He summoned her back inside to the shop's waiting area, where he'd set up his Olympia portable typewriter on the coffee table. You're not wasting your life here. Time to make a plan. From the age of 15, Gina had done all her homework in this very room, while drifters and eccentrics told their stories over the staccato buzz of Dominic Mully's tattoo machine. This was the one place on earth where she belonged. She'd memorized every design on those flash posters, their stock eagles and ships and arrowed hearts. She'd painted that mural over the couch, the centerpiece to all their flash, a muscled mermaid leaning against an anchor, holding an artist's palette as if she had just lettered the bold-faced Mullies on the wall. As of last Saturday, though, Gina was a high school graduate. She still had a nasty sunburn as a memento of the ceremony, and now began some other life. Step 1, Dominic had said, write a resume. But resumes meant interviews, meant jobs, where you had to look people in the eye, and that was never easy for her like it was for Dominic. She always said the wrong thing, or the right thing in a strange way, and had to escape sometimes to the bathroom because breathing felt like sucking air through a cotton filter. It had happened when she worked at the bait shop, the movie theater, the housekeeping service, and the card store, and wherever she worked next, it would happen again. Here she sat, though, miserably clacking out her name on the Olympia, one percussive letter at a time. If she were a typewriter key, which one would she be? The ampersand with its crossed arms? No, a left parenthesis, the scrawny bend of her body, the shy hunch to her shoulders. Hey, chickie, a customer, a biker with a blonde horseshoe mustache, was snapping his fingers at her. He was getting a tattoo of a blue devil from Mackie, one of the guys who worked for Dominic. You work here? She's the lackey, Mackie said, pausing to dip his needle back into a little paper cup of ink. Sweat glazed his bald head. His arms swelled out of the sleeves of his t-shirt. I helped my brother run the shop, Gina said. In truth, Gina wasn't allowed to run anything but the vacuum. She turned her attention back to the typewriter. Hard worker seeking position as what? Leave it blank for now. Strengths include, what I'm asking is, you do tattoos? See, I wanted some artwork down here. Gina glanced over to see the biker moving his hand to his fly, giving her a sly look. She rolled her eyes. Dudes always made that joke like they were the first ones to think of it. Focus on the typewriter. Strengths include attention to, she can't tattoo, Mackie said. And if you're that committed to decorating your dick, he hawked a load of phlegm and bent to spit it in the trash. I charge $100 handling fee. Damn it, Gina said. She'd meant to type detail. Now she'd accidentally typed dick. She pulled the carriage release lever and yanked the paper out. So what are you, the secretary? The biker said. I'm looking for a job, she said. Biker scratched his mustache. Thought you said you help run the shop. I don't take a salary. She liked saying it that way, classed it up. So what kind of job are you looking for? And that was the question, precisely the reason she needed a fortune teller. She could not envision this new life she was supposed to create, much less the next step toward it, which made these orders from Dominic, just picture yourself in 5 years, impossible. The best she could do was list all the futures she didn't want. Not anything that required a degree. College was a foreign land with an impossible price tag. Not any of her after-school jobs, the kind you got because you wanted to stock the neglected pantry with more than spaghetti and ketchup. The kind you quit or were fired from within a few weeks because whenever someone talked to you, you gaped at them like a fish. Not her mother's jobs. Bartender by night, receptionist at a glass and mirror company by day. Not anything, in fact, that would resemble her mother's life or keep her in that house any longer than she had to be. But also not anything that took her away from Blue Claw, because that would mean leaving Dominic. Clearly, he needed her just as much as she needed him, but in some act of pointless martyrdom, he kept harping on her to get out of their hometown and strike out on your own. This is not a real list, Dominic had said. This is just a pile of knots. You're making this difficult. Just write down your skills. My primary skills, she replied, are doing your grunt work, managing mom, and drawing weird pictures. This only made him scrawl at his own list. Jobs for girls with artistic flair. And stick it next to the typewriter before stalking out of the shop on some errand. Hey, the biker said, did you fall asleep over there? I said, what kind of job? Gina rubbed her face with both hands. I'm considering, she picked up Dominic's list, floral design, window dressing, seamstress, candy making. Gina, Mackie snapped. Less dit, more type. He turned to run his needle in water. You want to come work for me? The biker said. I restore elite vehicles. I just did a Lambo for Judas Priest's drummer. This was clearly Gina's cue to be dazzled. Did anyone actually impress women that way? If Gina were trying to get a girl's attention, she would do something legitimately sexy. Like ask the girl what she loved doing, what made her lose track of time, and then listen to the answer. Or perhaps knead a loaf of bread dough in a casual and quietly confident way while asking the girl what sort of sandwiches she liked and making occasional meaningful eye contact. In her dream world, she could pull that off. Gina got up and turned the typewriter so she was facing away from the biker toward the front window. Just as she got settled, a Dodge tradesman van pulled up to the curb and out climbed one of the largest human beings Gina had ever seen. That's that.
Awesome. So one of the things that resonated with me, I mean, obviously you can, as I mentioned, I dressed up to celebrate the 80s. I am a big fan of all things 80s. I feel like I was born a decade too late because I was a kid and I knew cool things were happening that I couldn't be part of in terms of like the culture. So, you know, I am very nostalgic for a time I didn't participate in the way I wanted to. But I love that you also give this very unique look into the world of tattooing at that time. And also stories that are set in the 80s in New York usually are very Manhattan centric. And here we have Long Island. So we've got distinct setting, distinct time period, and your cast of characters, of course, beginning with Gina, but, you know, going across the board, everybody in the book is so vibrant and just fully realized. So I would love to know kind of what came first. How did, you know, the book take shape? You know, what were its origins? And take it away.
Yeah, I love that question. The first thing that came about was tattooing as a setting, because I had a lifelong love of tattoos, like before tattoos were trendy. My first visit to a tattoo shop, I was 6 years old. My mom was getting tattooed, and that was in the late 80s. And I just, like, women were not really, that was not common for like suburban mommies to be getting tattooed back then. But my mom was really her own person. And I admired her so much. And I also really loved to draw. So I just became fascinated that you could have, you know, art that you carried with you in your body like this. So when it came time to, I decided at one point, all right, I want to start writing a novel. And a tattoo shop just seemed like a really rich and interesting place to set a story. Lots of people are coming in and out, which makes a lot of room for drama and conflict and intrigue. And I get to explore the art of it. So the tattooing really came first.
And did you grow up on Long Island?
I did, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you wanted to pay tribute to, were you also kind of in a similar type of town?
Yes.
Or, oh, okay. Okay. But, you know, you wanted to change names to protect the guilty and innocent, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, like I tell people, it was not the fancy part of Long Island. It was, I've lived in several towns on Long Island. So Blue Claw is really like a melange of all the towns put together. There's not one in particular that's a fictionalized, you know, so hopefully no particular town's going to get mad at me, but
I'm sure. No, I grew up in Brooklyn, but like we used to have like family and friends that we would visit on various parts of Long Island, and I have friends that, you know, grew up on Long Island. So I understand that it's not the Hamptons and nothing else. It's actually quite a varied place.
Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned that art, you had an interest in drawing. So is that something that kind of predated the writing, and sort of where did that segue come from?
Yeah, both of those were started super early for me. Probably drawing was first because kids draw before they write. But my parents both loved to draw, so we would draw a lot at home. But then I also they read to me a lot. I was very fortunate to get read to and get drawn with. And I became obsessed with reading. And then, of course, that's just the gateway drug. Like if you read too much, suddenly you start writing things. It's very risky. Your kids read only the appropriate amount. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, but writing became the thing I was most serious about and most passionate about. It's what I ended up going to school for. Then I got my MFA. Drawing has always just been fun for me. So it doesn't feel like a lot of pressure to get it right, which is good because the drawings, so there's about 30 illustrations in the book.
I was going to say that I love the drawings in here. Let me see if I can find any to show. I think that, here's one of pig. I'll hold that up. I love it when books kind of have these little visual surprises, and, you know, just, you know, the hot dog. And then I saw the video of you doing like a hand-drawn version of the cover of the book and just the hand lettering. So I think it's great that you were able to still incorporate that.
Thanks. It was lucky that the character was like, okay, I would tell myself you only have to draw as well as like an 18-year-old with a knack, you know, because there are some tattoo artists out there who, I mean, I follow a lot of them on social media. They can do things that are like photorealistic. There's just unbelievable art done. So I would sometimes be drawing these pictures and be like, oh no, real tattoo artists are going to see this. And I thought, you know what? No, I just need to be as good as an 18-year-old with like a knack for drawing. So yeah,
I think it surpasses that. So I can barely draw a straight line with a ruler. My husband is the artist of the family, so I'm so impressed with like any kind of like visual art, especially like, oh my God, you made a fig look like a fig. If I drew it, it would look like a blob with another blob next to it. So I very much admire that. And one of the things that also impressed me so much that I found out was that in researching this book, you shadowed not one, not two, not even three, 10 tattoo artists. Is that right? And tell me all about that, because that is some serious dedication. Like my new book that's coming out is about a magician. I read a lot about magicians. I chased up, I tried to get as many interviews as I could. I got one that, like, a professional magician. I thought, like, all right, I talked to a like real, like, successful career magician. 10 tattoo artists is really impressive.
By the way, I'm super excited for Acts of Violet. I cannot wait to read it.
Thank you.
So I'm just okay. I just had to say that before we move on. I like to read your book. So yeah, I either interviewed or shadowed this. So I didn't shadow all 10 of them, but I did interview 10 of them. And some of them I like hung out with repeatedly in their shop and just watched them work. Some of them I went and we kind of had, dates at their shop where they would show me this one woman, amazing. She was the first woman to open a tattoo shop in our county.
Wow.
And she really showed me the nitty gritty of, like, this is how the power supply works. And this is how the autoclave works. And here's what my flash books used to look like back in the day. So, some of them I interviewed over the phone. I, at one point, tracked down the tattoo artist who had tattooed my mother back in the 80s.
That's amazing.
I didn't know until I'd been writing this book for many years that it was a woman who tattooed my mom. I didn't remember that. I only remember sitting on the floor while she got tattooed.
Was it the same one from, like, your first childhood memory too, or?
Yeah, I tracked that.
Wow!
I found out.
Amazing.
I found out that who she was, and she's in a little shop in upstate New York right now. So I talked to her on the phone. I hope I get to meet her in person one day. So yeah, it is super fun researching with tattoo artists. In the beginning, I was intimidated, but I mean, I think a lot of them are introverts, just like writers, and a lot of them are also a little, like, awkward, like, maybe don't act awkward, but feel awkward. Like, so, one of them told me I lay awake at night worrying I messed up the tattoo that I did. So it's just, artists are interesting anyway. So yeah.
Yes, they definitely are. I think it's one thing to be an artist and worry about a painting or a drawing or a sculpture, but something that is going to be permanently on another person's body, like, that's a whole other level of pressure. You can't, grab an eraser or paint over it, or it's a lot more involved. And I am sure, and the detail really comes through in the novel too. Like, there's such kind of an authenticity, and you can tell that, like, every detail is so, it's meticulous, and there's just enough to kind of pepper throughout. And I also imagine, considering you had so many conversations, and there must have been some great stories that you picked up that you just couldn't include in the book. And I would love to kind of, if you have any you'd like to share, I'd be very curious, because it is a culture that fascinates me. I actually don't have any tattoos myself, but I don't know what I would get, where I'd get it. I'm Jewish. My mom would not love that. So there's so many reasons. And but I find them so fascinating. So I love to live vicariously through other people's tattoos.
It is a big decision. I think about tattoos for a long, long, long time before I get them. Yeah. But stories that didn't go in the book. Yeah, there were a lot. And some of the stories that are in the book were fictionalized things from real lives of the tattoo artists that I interviewed, like, with their permission. So that was fun. So I interviewed Marvin Moskowitz, who was a 3rd-generation tattoo artist, and his father and grandfather tattooed on the Bowery in New York City. And then when it was made illegal in New York City to tattoo, they moved out to Long Island, and they started the first tattoo shop, out there. So there was lots of, it wasn't illegal on Long Island, but the neighbors were not necessarily happy about having, like, a tattoo shop in the neighborhood. So, there was one time, there's actually a whole audio documentary called, like, I think, the last of the Bowery scab merchants that's about the Moskowitz family. And on that documentary, they talk about the neighbors calling in like a fake drug report, like, oh, that they were drug dealing out of the shop. So the police came like ready to do this drug bust, and they find these bags of white powder, and they're like sure that it's, coke. And they like, I think one of them, like, I don't know, tasted or something. I'm not into like, I'm not familiar with crime or police. The way that the Moskowitz family told it is they started, it was like white pigment for tattoos.
Oh.
That was how they made ink. They had to mix up the pigment. And I loved that. I loved that image of like these cops thinking they'd come upon this stash of drugs. It was like art.
That's awesome.
That one didn't make it into the book.
Yeah. And the other part of the research, I can identify with, writing about different time periods for Una. Obviously I didn't remember that much of the 80s. I remembered more of the 90s and the 2000s, but still, you have to kind of get into the details and the time period to make sure that you get it just right. And so I'm curious sort of because for me, that's some of the most fun I can have, especially when you get to do the homework and kind of learn about or revisit time periods, subjects that you personally are passionate about.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like homework. It's just, you're just enjoying yourself, and then you get to put it in a book. So tell me about some of your 80s research.
Yeah, because I was also a kid during the 80s, so it's blurry to me. So to be honest, I relied on my memories. I also asked my parents. BuzzFeed lists, super helpful. There's like people, I don't know who does this, but they're out there making these nostalgic BuzzFeed lists that are like, 35 things every 80s kid will love. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember what that eraser smelled like. It just brings back
fake strawberry.
Yes. That is what that eraser smells like.
Yeah. So every scented eraser smelled like fake strawberry.
Yeah, or grape.
Yes.
As far as the general 80s culture, I just did a lot of reading around, and I would Google old, magazine ads like for fashion or whatever. I would look up the top 40 charts for a certain day, like all the things you do. For the tattoo shop research for the 80s, though, that was definitely trickier because that world has disappeared. Like when tattoos went mainstream, that's not, probably in some ways for the better. It's more hygienic now. Like you get your own needle instead of one that has been like dipped in alcohol and used again, but that was a challenge recreating that world, but a fun one for sure.
But it sounds like you spoke to some tattoo artists that have been around. So even if they didn't have the firsthand knowledge, I imagine that they were able to kind of fill in a lot of those gaps for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Gotcha. And since you do have your own ink, and one of the things I love when I come across, like, I'm just like super nosy. So I love to know the stories behind people's tattoos, and because it is such I feel like there's a good story attached to even something like a Tweety bird on your hip or something. There's always a crazy night out or this sentimental reason. So would you be willing to share one of the stories connected to your tattoos, and how many do you have?
I have it's like the Trinity. It's 3 in 1. It started as one, and then it started growing. It started on my 18th birthday. I knew I wanted to get a tattoo, because my mother had one. So I thought about this for months, while I'm 17 and looking at all this symbolism. And I decided to get a spider because I was read in some mythology, they like represented writing. So this meant a lot to me. So I drew it myself. Like my mom and I went to the tattoo shop, and I got it done. I could not imagine a time when I possibly wouldn't want a spider on my arm anymore. I just saw myself 90 years old, very happy, still with this little spider. But like old guys not even old guys, they were old to me because I was 18, but just guys in general would come up and slap my arm and be like, "You got a spider on your arm?" And I'm like, after like about 7 or 8 years of that, I was in my mid-20s, and I'm like, you know what? I think I want to do something, like, let's grow this up a little. So I got this olive branch tattoo on it. And
wait, so that used to be a spider?
yeah, there was a spider right here. Like the top legs of the spider were here. The bottom was here.
Wow.
I'm fascinated with cover-up artists.
Yes, I think
Magic.
that's such an amazing skill.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That this is funny. I'm just like bearing my arm on.
I love it. And the shading. Oh my gosh, the colors are gorgeous. And
Yeah.
so what inspired the transition from spider to olives?
I wanted something. Gosh, now we're getting really deep. So I used to like when I was younger spiders because they can just kind of set up shop anywhere. They're resourceful and versatile, and I felt like I was sort of on my own in the world and had to do things, by myself. And I think with the olive branch, I was thinking more how a tree, like fruit grows on a tree. You're part of something larger. You're part of a community, or you're part of like whatever spiritual system you might believe in. Like, I liked the idea of not just having to produce, but to be part of something larger. And also there's the peace, like the peace connotations of an olive branch. So
I love it. That's beautiful. Wow.
And then I got the later.
You got what?
This water I got done later on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's just good. I got.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay. And do you have plans for the next one? Because everybody I know who has a tattoo is always thinking about the next tattoo that they're going to get at some point in the near or far future. Yeah. I've heard that like it's just as soon as you get one, even if you don't get a second one, it's like going to be on your mind.
Yeah, I am. And in fact, I'm going to one of the women who's thanked in the acknowledgments. There's a woman named Zoe Bean in Brooklyn who does very cool dot work tattoos. So I'm going to be going to her for a tattoo in August, and I'm psyched about that.
Oh, that's awesome. What do you know what you're gonna? Are you still kind of mulling it over?
No, I know what I've been thinking this for years. I before I had a publisher, before I had an agent, I thought if I ever get this book published, I'm going to get a tattoo to celebrate. And I love the quote. Oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on the novelist. But Ian Forster. But he says that writing a novel is like driving a car, taking a long car trip at night. Like you can see as far as your headlights, but you can get the whole way that way, And I loved that image when I'm like, this project is huge. And I would think, okay, I only need to see as far as my headlights. Like I just need to know the one next step. So I thought, you know what? I'm getting like a lantern by my foot. Like I like this light on the path.
Something to guide you. Oh, that's so beautiful. And I also appreciate the fact because for those of us who are not plotters and outliners and, who do kind of fumble around in the dark with just a little bit of light to see ahead, I feel like I can definitely connect to that. I've thought about too, like, my even though I don't have any, I'm always like hypothetically, like I love feathers. And one of the things, because I'm child free by choice, but I do feel like my books are my children. So I thought, if I ever, and I love text tattoos, I think they're so cool. I mean, of course, we're writers, we're readers, we love words. So I love seeing words on people's bodies, different fonts. Like I'm always like, what does your tattoo say? Again, nosy, personal boundaries, not so much. So yeah, I've thought about like, because I self-published my first novel that had the main character was Astrid. So I thought Astrid Una Violet, maybe I won't rule it out, but like, just the way that people get their kids' names. Those are my kids. So my daughters.
Astrid. Oh, Astrid. Okay.
Yeah, Astrid.
When I first started writing this novel, there was a character named Astrid who's long gone now, but I was like, what? Anyway.
Oh, that's funny. It's not a name you come across so much.
Yeah.
Though now it makes me think of Jan's daughter on The Office too. So let's see, what else have we got? I'm going back to my cheat sheet here. Okay, so I am going to assume that none of the characters are 100% you, but at the same time, every character at least has a little bit of yourself. So I would love to know if there isn't a single character you relate to the most, which traits from which characters do you connect with?
Oh, I love this question. You totally nailed it, because sometimes I have to, people are like, oh, is this autobiographical? And I'm like, kind of, if you took me apart and turned me into a collage and like added a bunch of other stuff. Like, I mean, I have Gina's, or Gina has my probably, like introversion, social anxiety. I'm like a fake extrovert. Um,
Oh my God, I totally understand that.
like,
I think a lot of writers are. It's like
yeah.
we have to like be out in the world, but we do most of our best work kind of in our bubbles. So
Yeah.
yes, I get
I
it.
love people. I love talking to people, but it definitely takes battery power. So I
Yep.
think Gina's feeling at one point, she says she feels like an aquarium with this glow in the dark fish in it. And if she's not careful, everybody's going to see it. I definitely felt that way for years and years. So that's the doodling. Also, Gina's doodling. That's me. Wondering where does she belong in the world? Like, certainly, Anna, who's the young woman she falls in love with, I think her spirituality, her love of activism, her concern about the world. She's like freaked out about, nuclear weapons and poverty and all at the Cold War at the time. So, and her wanderlust, her love for travel. They all, I think, have a little bit of me in that, for sure.
I think they have to, right?
Yeah.
And so this is your debut year, which is a very exciting roller coaster of a time. And what has been the biggest surprise, or some interesting kind of unexpected moments that you've had, that because even though you talk to other writers and you hear about experiences, like what you go through is so singular, so specifically you. And I'm sure there was at least one thing that like, oh, I did not expect this, or something that came about.
Yeah. I am shocked by every good thing. I probably shouldn't admit this, but like when you work in isolation for so long and make peace with I feel like my work is good. I'm confident about my work, but for whatever reason, it hasn't found a home, but I'm going to keep writing because I love it. And okay. And then, when somebody writes a gorgeous blurb about it, or it's like a beautiful review, I continue to be very appreciative and happily surprised. And I hope I continue to not expect them, so they will just keep feeling like presents, like that I just find. So that actually has been a surprise to me.
Oh, that's such a great attitude to take, because I remember being in I'm still, part of whatever the debut year you get, like you find your fellow debuts and you form a community and you support each other. And, there's so much anxiety and worry. And especially because, once the story's out of your hands, even though you have no control, you're still worried of, the reception and the coverage and so many things. And I remember that just the best piece of advice from I don't remember who it was, so I wish I did, because it was from a novelist who's already more seasoned. And she said that, her biggest regret kind of during her debut time was that it just goes by in such a blur, and she wishes that she spent less time worrying about so many things and more time just taking in all of the exciting positive moments. So the fact that that nobody even needs to tell you, because like I needed that wake up call. And unfortunately it came in time that I was able to kind of immerse myself in it. And so that the fact you're savoring it, I think.
Yeah. Nothing lasts and everything passes. And I mean, everything is written like, sand on the beach and the waves wash it away, like the good and the bad. I'm very, very grateful to be doing this. So that's cool that you were able to realize that in time to still savor that moment.
Yes. I'm so glad too. And honestly, it's something that still stays with me, because you still go through, for every book, and this is only the second time around, like I'm in my pre-pub weekly, my book comes out in like less than 2 weeks. So I still have to kind of take that step back and like, okay, just chill. And these are good things that are happening. And, like, stop worrying about the things that are completely out of your hands. Try to think about the next thing and kind of like put your energy into kind of the positive things. And, you know, if reading reviews is helpful, great. If it's kind of stressing you out, don't read them. Everybody's like, don't read the reviews. But how can you not like peek at Goodreads every once in a while? I mean, we're not made of stone here, right?
Yeah.
So I totally, like I feel like I can still relate. And honestly, like it wasn't that long ago for me. I'm not like the seasoned professional here. So tell me, what was the most challenging part of either writing the novel or like the publishing process for you, or both?
Yeah, most challenging part was probably everything that led to being that open-handed about it, like the endurance part of it. I started this novel when I was 19.
Wow.
I just decided I want to write a novel and I'm going to get started, and I thought I was just going to bust it out, and you know, not realizing how much of your resources it takes to then go, you know, make a living and have children, which I ended up doing. And my first year out of college was during the ramp up to the Iraq War. So I was working at a peace organization. I was an activist out of like a very stressful time. There was no way I was getting writing done, you know? So I think I was constantly fighting the pull of everything else in my life to work on this novel, which I was really passionate about. And the endurance was the hard part, like to keep believing that it was worthwhile when, you know, if you get a paycheck, like, look, you have a paycheck. It's something you can see, you know, a book until it's here and now it's holy cow, it's here. Until it looks like this, it's hard sometimes to believe this is worth persevering on. That was difficult, but I think the fruit of it is like a relaxation about some other stuff like reviews.
Yeah. And I think that stories like yours inspired me so much when I was coming up. And I think that you're going to inspire a lot of other writers that, you know, start a book, put it away and hope someday. And, you know, I think that seeing, you know, what you can achieve, no matter how long it takes, is just, it's really going to help keep people going. So I think we have some questions from the group. Is that right? I want to make sure we leave time for any other questions. Oh, hold on. I think I see a few here.
Yeah, I was like, would y'all maybe want me to read a couple out?
Yeah.
Yes. Is it? Yes. I don't see them in front of me. So sorry. Now I see where to find them. Okay.
No, you're all good. It is all good. So we'll start with this one at the top here. June, if you could get a tattoo from Gina, what would you have her design?
Oh, this is a good question because I already have this other tattoo plan and now I gotta be imaginative about it. I think I would, assuming she had some years under her belt now and she was not an apprentice anymore. As an apprentice, I probably wouldn't tell her like go nuts, but tattoo artists really love when they've achieved a level of artistry and they find a client who loves their style enough to just trust them to do something. It's a really cool thing to watch. I've never done that. It feels frightening, but I would hope that if I met Gina several years into her career and I was blown away by it, that I could be like, here's a section of my calf. Like, what would you like to do?
Wow.
That's aspirational trust.
I love it. Okay. We kind of already discussed it, but so if you have anything else to add, if not, it's okay. But aside from the setting of the book, how much of your own life is reflected in the characters in the book?
Oh yeah. So definitely the perseverance that I had to apply in doing this book completely made its way into the story. And I really think of this as a book that I would want to hand to somebody who feels alone, who doesn't know where they belong, who feels like a fish from some other ocean that got into a pond where maybe it didn't belong. Somebody who's like, I don't know what to do with my life. I feel directionless. Somebody who's learning, who other people have control over their life and they are realizing it's time to own it for themselves. You know, those are all things that I went through during the course of writing this book. And I think those questions, you know, when Gina sits with her fellow tattoo artist, Rick, and they have a conversation about like, what does our work mean? Like, does this do any larger good? And why do we make art? That is totally stuff I wrestled with. So that is, yeah, there you go.
It's funny, when I was reading your book, I remember actually feeling like I wish this book existed when I was graduating college, because even though I studied creative writing,
Yeah.
I was like, wait, I'm graduating college. There aren't like just jobs for creative writers. Like, what am I actually going to do with myself?
Yeah.
And, you know, I went through a period of years, and I think just a book like this would have been so kind of comforting and, you know, just self-affirming that, okay, you know, like this is a common struggle and you'll figure it out, and just kind of trust yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for that, because that's exactly one of the people I had in mind when I was writing this book, that I hope it makes its way to them. Thanks.
You also have a comment that just says, you have a beautiful tattoo.
Thanks.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
And there's another question here. The story with the fortune teller and Anna was so sensitively written. Without giving too much plot away, can you speak about that storyline and where you weaved it into Gina's story?
Yes. I'm wondering what part of that they're referring to. Let me think, how do I talk about this without spoilers? On the first, when Gina finally convinces her brother to take her on as an apprentice, which he does not want to do, on the first day of her apprenticeship, a man walks into the studio with a young woman that Gina assumes is his daughter. And he has an accent that she can't quite place. And he says he's from Switzerland, and he says that he recognizes her. And she's immediately captivated by the young woman who's with him. And she looks at this woman and she thinks, the drawings I've been doing, the flash that I have been making for the tattoos I want to do is for a person like that. And from that point on, it's sort of that one moment of intense connection. She develops a friendship with these two people, but more so with the young woman who is Anna. I feel like I'm not answering the question though. Like, what are they?
I feel like
What's that?
Job. Yeah. Yeah, there's no more questions down here, but y'all feel free to throw some more in here.
And I would love to know also what you're working on, what's next. I know right now you're kind of busy promoting, and that takes its own energy, but do you have another book in mind? Do you feel like Gina's story kind of continues, or would you revisit even peripherally this world? What are we going to hear from you next?
I am working on something new, and I'm really excited about it. And it's not from this world. I think I'm done with this world.
Fair enough.
I've revised it so many times, and I love this book, and I'm very proud of it. And I feel like it is down to its leanest, fiercest version, but I'm ready to do something new. I'm writing a new novel that weaves in a young woman inheriting a strip mall that she never wants. It's her least favorite place on earth. She's an environmentalist. It ruined her family. It tore them apart. It put them into debt. And she moves away and she tries to get away from it. And she inherits this old, dilapidated strip mall and has to figure out what to do with it. And it weaves in, oddly enough, Georgian culture, like the nation of Georgia.
Yeah. Neighbors to my former homeland.
I was thinking, actually, as I said that, I'm like, she knows this already. Not everybody knows that Georgia's a country.
Yeah.
But my best friend is Georgian, and I'm fascinated with their alphabet and their culture. And these things are getting braided together in a way that I'm really excited about. I have the tinglies about this new novel. So,
and is it also set on Long Island, or where is it set? When is it set?
Yeah, set partly on Long Island and partly in Georgia, and I think it's going to be contemporary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. And actually, I'm working on something that involves tattoos, so what? I may hit you up for a little bit of just insider knowledge at some point. We'll see.
What are you doing? Can you say what you're doing?
It's still that's kind of all I can say. The only other thing is that the title and the basic idea. I was just talking about this with a writer friend. I've had for over 15 years now. I've been sitting on this idea, and I've just never been able to have like forward momentum. And I feel like it's if I don't do it now, it's going to leave me, and another writer will take it on, because we have this, like, I feel this sort of shared creative consciousness, and that, you know, if you don't do it, like, it's going to kind of float away to somebody else. And but I feel like, okay, this might be the time, because I'm getting a lot more ideas for it. So yeah, it's still germinating, but I'm crossing my fingers that, you know, 15, 18 years is long enough for it to marinate.
I'm excited for you. It's like a cicada, those 17-year cicadas.
Yeah.
It's been waiting.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Time. Anybody else have any questions?
There is one down here. Do you have a family in Long Island or elsewhere who have read the book? And if so, what were the reactions? Will your children read it if they haven't already?
I love this question. So for years, my son was asking me to read the book, because they're both voracious readers. I have 2 little boys, and I would tell him, no, it's a grown-up book. And
how old?
Now he's 12. But this was many years. I've been working on it since he was, you know, a baby. This is all he remembers is mama sit in her office writing a novel that nobody ever sees. Like, so it's blowing his mind that this is happening in the world, you know. So when Pamela Dorman Books at Viking took on this book in 2020, he was like, now can I read it? And I was like, well, you're 10 now. When it comes out, you'll be 12. And I thought, all right, when I was 12, I was reading like Stephen King and like lots of racy.
V.C. Andrews. Come on. We read that like way too early.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, at 12, we'll be able to handle it. So then publication arrives, and now I have to have the guts to hand it over. And I did. And I said, you know, and he started reading it, and he said, Mama, it's like a real book, like a real writer. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, but this doesn't sound like you. And I'm like, well, I don't talk like this. But I mean, and then he said, I don't usually read books like this, but I want to know what happens next. I keep wanting to know what happens next. I could cry just talking about it. It's very moving to have your child, especially one who's 12 and is maybe, you know, rolling his eyes at mama sometimes, to love it. That meant a lot to me.
But that sounds like such a rave review from a 12-year-old boy too. That's, and so intelligent too, to like, it doesn't sound like you. And, you know, like, I don't know, when I feel like whenever somebody says it's like a real book, that it's like legitimizing you, that it's not like something you just did for fun in your spare time. Like, you are there among other authors. Like, you are now real. This has really happened. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, my mother-in-law just texted me today, and I was like, I love this. I read it in 2 days. I'm like, you were holding it. I didn't know you were a reader like that. It's really fun. It's fun to have my family reading it, for sure. Yeah.
I have a question. Yeah. My own question. Who are some of y'all's favorite authors?
Oh, yeah. I was gonna like the whole reading recommendations, and June, you go first of your favorite authors.
I mean, do you want to know like my all-time faves who influenced me, or do you want to know what I want to read this summer, or like, you know, whatever I've recently?
Let's do all-time faves, and then like our reading lists. We'll take it one at a time, because those are like 2 huge questions.
Okay. Yeah, hugely influential. I mean, it was like The Great Gatsby, which I read over and over, and John Irving, like The World According to Garp and A Prayer for Owen Meany, and I just liked how his books were sort of darkly comic and weird and smart, but very readable. And I really liked how they were at this intersection between like literary and more commercial. And so those were 2 that were really influential on me. I feel like I should be naming women bad feminist right now.
It's okay. You know, it's funny, Fitzgerald, his short stories, I was very moved by and like very influenced by. And I always felt like there was such a kind of sensitivity and empathy around like just the way that he wrote about relationships and emotions felt so much more like it was coming from a conventionally feminine place than masculine place. Like I haven't encountered men writing about it. And then because, you know, I can't resist like a fun pop culture conspiracy, not quite pop, but I heard that, you know, there were rumors that actually his wife wrote a lot of, especially the short stories that because he had the bigger name, that her stories were actually published under his name. And that is like one of history's mysteries that I would love to know if that's just a literary rumor or if there's any truth to it, because I feel like there's a reason that like you know, not a lot of men's writing resonates with me on like that kind of emotional level. So very, very curious to know if there's, but again, I have absolutely nothing to back that up besides literally somebody once told me at a party and I was like, now I'm going to remember this and obsess about it forever because that's what I do. So I'm right with you there. For me, the author that took me from like reader to, oh my God, like fiction is this literary like world that maybe I want to actually like be involved in and think about is Margaret Atwood. I remember getting The Handmaid's Tale for $1 at a flea market somewhere in Massachusetts and just devouring it when I was somewhere like in middle school. And then I like read Cat's Eye and Robber Brett. Like I just kind of went through a big portion of her catalog. And I think that what kind of stayed with me is the way that she wrote about women in a way that was complex. And, you know, as a writer, sooner or later, you know, you get the criticism of like writing characters that are relatable and likable. And what does it mean to be likable? And she just wrote interesting, multifaceted women that I think that mentality influenced me very deeply. And a third one I'll name is also, I know I should be naming more women, but Milan Kundera, because his books, he breaks the cardinal rule, show, don't tell. He tells all his stories and they're so brilliant and they're full of so much kind of insight and philosophy and humanity. And so, yeah, I think kind of a lot of that laid the foundation for me personally.
Cool. Those are good.
Have you guys seen the movie Midnight in Paris? It's not high film or anything like that. I watched that the other day when we were talking about the Fitzgeralds. It's super cute. If you haven't seen it, June, it's an aspiring writer. He's like stuck and he's traveling in Paris and some sci-fi fluke happens and he goes back in time and he gets to meet all of his favorite writers and both the Fitzgeralds are in it.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I just one more.
Yeah.
I just have one more book that I really do have to name. Okay, so when I was 12, I started reading this over. There's some books you just get obsessed with, but Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe I think was hugely influential to me. And I loved the relationship between Ruth and Iggy. And I remember thinking, even at that age, like, they seem like they're in love. Why is no one saying they're in love? But they definitely seem like they're in love, you know? And that was one of many things that was a good, I think that one got in my blood a little.
Let's see if we have any more questions down here. Oh, looks like we do have another one. Okay. Oh, we were answering it. I mean, that's perfect. Curious to know what your favorite novels are. So I was like, we started. There's another one as well. What are some of your favorite places to read on Long Island? Where y'all read at?
A hammock.
Yeah.
Do they mean like read my way? Like, cozy with a book?
No, I think that's what they mean. Yeah. Okay. You're a hammock reader. That's a very specific type of reader, I feel like.
It's funny. We have a yard that the previous owners had a hammock between two pine trees, and they took the hammock when they moved. And I was thinking, like, oh, we should get a hammock. But then, like, the practicalities of it, I was like, am I actually gonna like trudge through the yard to the trees to this hammock? And because like I need my water and I need my lotion, and like then I need an end table, and it's a hammock, and then it's a thing. And so I haven't gotten the hammock yet, but I still think about it.
Yeah.
This is funny.
Sit down here like a seaside bar or a park.
That sounds nice. Gosh.
Yeah.
I'm inspired. Maybe I'll do my next, take my book to a seaside bar.
Yeah.
That sounds lovely.
I read at bars sometimes. I kind of like if there's enough noise, it kind of becomes no noise.
Yeah.
I did that when I lived in Brooklyn. Yeah. Now I don't know. I like my little bubble. So I'm like so comfortable just being cozy in, like on the sofa or a nice like chair. Or I actually read a lot in bed, right? Before I go to sleep. I'm so sorry. There's fireworks going off all of a sudden. I hope you guys can't hear them. But I don't know why. So I find that like, even if I try to go to bed at a decent hour, which is like 12, I will still be up reading until 3 a.m. Like either, just like following some rabbit holes, finding a subject that interests me, or getting completely sucked into a book. And now I'm like super into audiobooks too. But June, so I would love to know what are because I'm, no matter how long my TBR list is, I'm still looking for more. What are some great books you read recently that you've been raving about and would recommend?
Yeah. Let's see. To be honest, in the very recent past, I have just been working all the time, doing lunch stuff. But
so, what do you want to read then?
I'm very excited to read "Walks of Vanished Earth" by Erin Swan, which is coming out from Viking, came out from Viking very recently, and it I think goes from the year. I want to say 1873 to 2073, something. It's like spans a huge period of time, 7 generations. I think it's a dystopian novel and has to do with environmental change and how it affects people. And it just sounds imaginative and wonderful. And I'm very excited to read this book.
Awesome.
Yeah. How about you? Do you got anything glimmering on your TBR list?
Like so many things. Yeah. I like you. I think like when you are, you find a publisher that kind of has authors that you love, there are definitely flattering authors that like I already am a fan of and discovering more. I like reading thrillers in the summer. I find it's just like such a nice seasonal mix. So I read Alice Feeney's first novel, and I had a feeling I was gonna love her. And now she has this, like for years I was like, sometimes I lie. I know I'm going to love this book. I finally read it. I like to start with an author's like first book if I can. Yeah. And so I might just like catch up, like mix of audio and, just have like a little Alice fest. And then Secret Identity by Alex Segura is also high on my list. We both used to work in the comics industry. So just sort of reading about his kind of perspective on it will be really interesting. Gosh, it's so funny. It's like you have so many things on your list, and then when somebody like kind of asks you to narrow it down, I finally got into Octavia E. Butler with Parable of the Sower. So I want to like keep going, and I'm not sure whether to like do the sequel next, or there's this trilogy that I want to read, and so, or Kindred, obviously. So I'm kind of like torn between kind of which of her wonderful books to read next. But yeah, just it's ever growing, like audiobooks, ebooks, physical books, like the library just keeps expanding. So any other questions before we
speak now, y'all? Yeah. Anything else? And thank you both so much for coming, by the way. It's been a really fun conversation.
It's a pleasure.
Good talks. Good
Yeah.
vibes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us. I really appreciate it. I mean, it's my debut novel, and to get the chance to talk about it, that someone wants to know about it. And I'm excited. I'm excited about my book. So it's
so exciting. Congratulations. We got it out on our new release table at Madison Street Books. It's so exciting.
And then Margarita's book will be there in like a couple of weeks.
Yeah. When is it? When's your book coming out, Margarita?
Mine is July 5th.
July 5th.
So yeah, so it'll be less than 2 weeks. Yeah, a week from this coming Tuesday. So yeah, it's been exciting. I've got like a little book tour planned, and the last time I got to actually, my Una Out of Order came out right before all of the lockdowns for COVID. So I had like a week of promotional activities, bookstores, and then I didn't set foot in, pretty much anywhere for like the next, year and a half. Yeah. So I didn't see my book in a bookstore for like over a year or 2 years after it came out. So like just seeing people send me photos of it and seeing it on social media, like that was so great. But being able to like kind of physically go back and, promote the book, see readers face to face instead of just over Zoom, doing like tons of Zoom book clubs. I'm very excited to just kind of do things in person again for this book.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, congratulations to you both.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us. And it doesn't look like we have any more questions right now. So I guess we'll just go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks again for the 500th time. It was really wonderful, and it seems like a lot of cool.
Have a great summer.
And have fun promoting your book. I will be doing my part, and hopefully we'll cross paths face to face one of these days.
I am certain that we will.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Take care.